Welcome to Miles of Books, a book-centric show to take along on your run. From Another Mother Runner and Feisty, I'm your host, Sarah Bowen Shea, and Coach Liz Waterstraat is my co-host to talk about a slender, intriguing nonfiction book that debuted earlier this year. Hello, Liz. It's been a while.
It has. Hi, Sarah.
Yes, yes. So before we get into the book that we're going to be talking about, you made me laugh the other day when you texted me a photo of what your husband deems as light summer fare.
This is his summer read. My husband and my older son, they're heading out on a European cruise with my husband's side of the family. And my husband's like, I'm going to go to the bookstore and pick up a book. And I'm like, oh, you should read. And I'm giving him the names of some light nonfiction books I thought he might enjoy, like Comfort Crisis, Walk in the Woods. He comes back with The Odyssey.
And a very unique looking copy, too.
Yes. Yeah, not like the normal copy that maybe we read in high school. This is like thoughts on the Odyssey or the history of the Odyssey. Anyway, I'm like, you're not going to be sitting in Santorini on the beach reading the Odyssey, are you? Maybe it's very appropriate, though.
Maybe if he sees the Christopher Nolan movie before he goes, so that's causing quite the buzz. But then the apple doesn't fall far from the tree there in your house, because your youngest is reading, as I understand it, this tome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he's digging right into It's Not Rocket Science. That book it's a little over my head, but it's right in his league, and so he's reading that, and he's got a book about chess. So
yeah. So this one's called It's Just Rocket Science: Exploring Physics Through Spaceflight Missions, and it is by a longtime member of our community, Trisha Murrow. So who was nice enough to send it to us, and you're like,
yes,
yeah, I bet my what is Mason, like 9, 10?
He's 10 now. Yeah. It's in this house. I'm illiterate basically compared to everyone else and what they're reading these days.
Oh my goodness. Okay. But you today are talking about a book that sounds unlike any other that you've talked about on this show before. It's called The Other Side of Change: Who We Become When Life Makes Other Plans. And it's written by Maya Shankar. So fill us in on the basics of that one.
Yeah, I saw this one. This one made the rounds, and I saw it, and I finally picked it up. It's got a beautiful cover. I don't have it in front of me, but you could choose this one based on its cover. This is a newer book. It was published back in 2026. Instant New York Times bestseller, and I would agree it is probably one of the best books I've read in the last couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 191 pages.
Did that color your reaction to it?
It made it really easy to read, I'll tell you that. So I feel like she knew exactly when to stop, too. So that's the mark of a great author. But Shankar herself, she's a cognitive scientist, a Rhodes Scholar. That's very, very scholarly and sounds smart. She was a Obama White House policy advisor. She's a host of the podcast called A Slight Change of Plans. And she also digs in the book about her background in violin. She was quite the violinist. She went to Juilliard. She studied under Itzhak Perlman, who you may be aware of. Yeah. And she had an unexpected personal change, which actually part of that was she lost her ability to play the violin after it's very serious tendon injury to her hand. So it sent her looking for some answers. And then she spent 3.5 hours writing this book. And her even bigger problem.
No, 3.5 years. 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Excuse me. Writing this book. And then she's had many problems along the way. But the biggest one, I would say the most personal one that she shares, she discloses it in the last chapter.
Oh, So that's different than the hand injury, or that is the hand injury?
Yeah, so she kind of kicks off the topic by talking about her hand injury, and then at the end she gives you the real story, the real like life-changing thing that happened to her. And I don't want to spoil it for everyone.
Okay, yeah, okay, great, all right. Okay, so nearly as long as most people are in college to write a 191-page book. Wow.
Yeah. I think she had a lot to work through. She did a lot of research. This book is a lot of storytelling, really good storytelling. And then she weaves in the research after that. So I think she just took her time to get to know people and their stories and really sort of let the topic marinate, so to speak. And I'm guessing that's why it took her a while.
Okay. All right. And the big idea behind this one?
Yeah, so this is not a performance book, which is traditionally what we talk about here. It's not a productivity book. It's really a book about identifying specifically what happens to you when your life takes something away that you've built yourself around. And I think that even just off the top of our heads, each of us can think of something like that. So she interviewed people who had gone through extraordinary disruptions, and some were truly tragic. And she
Mm,
weaves their story together with cognitive science, which is right up her alley with all the research she does. So the
mm,
stories are not always tidy, I'll be honest with you. Some really do end in places that the person never planned for or would not have chosen. And some are really messy to read and hard to read. It really tugs at your heartstrings. But
mm,
what they share ultimately is that the people in them are different on the other side and
mm,
not always in the ways they expected. And I think we've all heard examples of this. Somebody gets into a life changing accident, they emerge on the other side and they're different, but often they'll say something like, it was the best thing that happened to me, or
mhm,
because that happened to me, these other things happened to me that were actually good things. So, the question that she threads through the entire book is really rather simple, but also highly complex. And it's when the plan changes, who do you become?
mm,
And I think most of us have never actually asked ourselves that. We're so busy trying to get back to who we were or what we were doing that we never think of, well, who might we become instead?
mm, hmm. That's intriguing. Hmm.
Yeah. So do you think, so thinking about like, let's bring it back to the running community, the athlete community. Do you think that, let's say they have an injury or something happens, that they're always trying to get back rather than forward?
It's so difficult. I also think not only of injury, but aging,
Hmm.
which ultimately is linear and only goes forward. And the wishing for those, faster times, the less pain, the not having to warm up for 15, 20 minutes before we go do something.
Yeah.
So for sure. And also, I think maybe even questioning like, should I have started younger? Would I be in a different place if I'd started younger? There's
Yeah.
just a lot of that, and, yeah, it can be self-sabotaging, and it brings to mind the when you look at a photo of yourself from, 10 years ago, and you think, "Oh my gosh, why wasn't I just happier with the way things were then?"
Yep.
Like, "Look at my arms then," or, whatever, and it's just like but right now will be 10 years from now, so
Yeah.
enjoy what you have in
Yeah.
this moment.
So true. So true.
Yeah. All right, it's sponsor break time. Coach Liz will share, among other things, the three things she learned from this thought provoking book when we return. Okay, three things you learned, Liz.
Okay, the first is that the most important question after a change isn't what happened, it's who else can I or this person be. So Shankar starts the book with how she lost the violin. Her entire identity had been built and wrapped around it since Juilliard. She thought that's what she was going to do for the rest of the life.
Hmm.
And none of those technical skills transferred when it was gone. But what she realized is what she had built along the way. So the grit and the creativity and the capacity to perform under pressure turned out to matter in pursuits that she never even considered. So
Hmm.
change didn't take what she built, it took what she thought she was building it for. And then she was forced to reckon with the question of who else can I become?
Hmm.
So, Sarah, my question for you is, when a version of yourself you'd invested in changed, so maybe this was a goal or a role or a chapter closed, did you find that what you'd built transferred somewhere that you didn't expect?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I mean, this one's kind of a little bit of a layup, that I was a longtime magazine journalist, and that market got kind of rocky. And at the same time, that was when Dimity and I's first book came out, and so it was taking I thought of myself as quote unquote just a writer, and then certainly use that in the building of another mother runner, but then also like, hey, looky there, I'm kind of good at marketing. I can get behind a microphone and talk instead of typing, that sort of thing. So maybe just that the curiosity. So going back to Shankar's thing, so there were, some traits, some qualities, some skills. So curiosity and creativity that I had from writing that translated into, making building AMR into what it became.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I mean, it's nice that you're able to reflect on that and recognize and see how it's all connected.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Okay. What's another thing you learned?
So we are walking around with a garden we didn't entirely plant. I like this metaphor and this
Oh,
idea
mhm.
as a gardener myself.
Yes.
So this is from therapist Abby Burke, her garden metaphor, and it's one that I really liked. So she says each person arrives with a garden already underway. Some plants inherited, some seeds planted in childhood by people who didn't ask your permission, some
Mhm.
species of weeds that have been growing for generations before you arrived. And then as an adult, you choose how to tend to it, what to pull and what to cultivate. And
Mhm.
most of us have been managing this garden on autopilot for years. We've never stopped to ask, which beliefs did we actually choose? And which ones did we just find growing here when we arrived? So, what
Mm.
Shankar argues is that change then is an opportunity to finally look at our gardening honestly, to weed it out, to keep what we want, and then pull out what no longer we want growing there.
Mm. Mm.
So, Sarah, is
Mhm.
there one thing growing in your garden right now that you didn't plant? You can take that question any way you want to. You can, I don't know if you have a garden, but we can talk about the pests or what else is in there or just the theoretical garden.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think about that it took me literally decades to realize that I am an athlete. And in part because going back to, you talking about some seeds planted in childhood by people who didn't ask your permission, that sounded kind of ominous and, some dark undertones. But I think about my dad, whom I loved so dearly with my whole heart and was a wonderful man. So I'm not trying to disparage him at all. But he so often said that people in the Bowen family, we were all people of the word. And so I was a big reader as a child. And so it got into my head, I think that haha got into my head that we were cerebral people and not people of the
Mm,
body. We were people of the brain instead. And you the two can coexist. Shockingly, your your brain can be attached to your body and you can use your body to move. So, but for a long time I definitely felt like I was just a reader being a poser pretending to be a runner. So,
yeah.
yeah. How about that?
S- So I was thinking about this one today, and it's not really specifically to me, but I think as women, sometimes we are told that the compliment we're seeking is, oh, wow, you look really good, or you look pretty, or you look thin, or whatever. And I was in the gas station today after sweating my booty off on a run. I was disgusting. And the woman behind the cash register goes, "You are built like a tank." And I was like, "Yes, I am 51 and I am built like a tank." And it was just the best compliment ever. And, not one that really should be in the garden of being a woman.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe 30 years ago I would have been appreciative of being called a tank, but these days, I'm just rolling right in that. I am a tank.
Love that. Oh my gosh. Um, all right, and the third thing you learned?
So the word AWE is not a luxury. It's
Mm,
one of the most effective tools for getting out of your head. So she referenced this book. I actually read it a couple of years ago. Beautiful cover. It's like the Northern Lights. It's very pretty. The
mhm,
book is called Awe, of course, and it's by Dasher Keltner. And he defines awe as the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends your current understanding of the world. How's that for woo woo? And
yes.
neuroscience shows that when we experience awe, activity in certain brain regions associated with self focus decreases. So basically, we get away or out of ourselves.
Mm,
And so a mental loop that might keep circling starts to quiet in a way that even journaling and talking about something often cannot achieve. So, she said, you can have awe during listening to music or being under a big sky or when you're on a long run out somewhere beautiful in nature. And so she makes the case for doing this more on purpose just to kind of get outside of yourself and away from your own struggle. And it made me think about how we as runners or pickleballers or anyone who's out there just enjoying activity outside, how much we are able to access awe more
mm,
so than someone who just is inside all day or maybe even lives in a city or just somewhere that is not as awe inducing in the traditional
mhm.
nature sense. So what do you
Oh,
think about that?
I think that's 100% true, and thinking about that, it is one of the main reasons why love being active
Yeah.
because of giving myself access to those type of experience, whether it's, when I'm out on my elliptigo along the Columbia River and, seeing Mount Hood off there in the distance rising up, or sometimes also for me, awe is you mentioned pickleball, so I'm gonna go there. That sometimes I am just so happy to be on the court with the people I'm with, and stepping back from that and being like, "I am so happy and pleased and grateful to be with these people and be doing this activity and moving my body in a
Yeah.
largely pain-free way." And
Hmm.
then also one of the courts I play on outside has these towering fir trees over it, and then there's the Willamette River right there, and it just, um I think awe can be everywhere that if you're looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
And you've touched upon, I think, the most important feature of awe is that it tends to bring out gratitude. And I feel like gratitude in all of these books we've covered, gratitude is the antidote to just about any sort of problem or thing that's going wrong. When you
mhm,
can tap into gratitude, it's really powerful.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. So, and were there any things in the book that surprised you?
Yeah. So, and this might not be a surprise with the title of it. This is not an optimistic book. And I feel like that's what made it really trustworthy. And
Oh.
so, every self-help book I've read tends to promise this version of, and then things got better, and and then you can do this, or you can always achieve anything. But this book doesn't really do that. Some of the stories end in places that the person didn't choose and wouldn't have picked and maybe didn't even like. And she's not arguing that change leads somewhere good. It's that
Mm,
change changes you, and what you do with that is the actual subject of the book. So
mm,
that honesty, I think, is harder to write. And it's also harder to read because not every story has a happy ending. But that's what I found it really touching and almost humanizing in
mm,
that sense.
hmm. That's lovely, and I also, I really like, again, to reiterate that this is a book that seems not exactly in the Liz Waterstraat mold of books, you know?
Well, it's one of those books that I think, maybe if you were going through something, you would pick up. Um, and not that my life is easy, but I might be beyond some of those phases where I felt like I was going through a really turbulent time.
Mhm,
But this book does remind me, like, maybe 10 years ago, life was more turbulent. And I did read another book that was very similar to this called Bearing the Unbearable. So just stories of how
mm,
do you overcome? How do you move past something? How do you, bear the idea that something has happened that is truly unbearable? So, if someone is in that place in life, and I'm sure I will at some point get to that place again because life is life.
mhm,
I think that, this is a really handy book. This is a book I could see revisiting exactly
mm,
for that reason.
mm. It also sounds like the type of book that might be a good gift for people who,
Yes.
for friends or family members who are going through, a trying time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my athletes just experienced a horrific event. And that's immediately what I thought to myself that
Mm,
I really need to pass this book on, or I hope they pick up the book themselves if they hear this. Because yeah, I think it could be like that companion that someone needs to get through something.
mm, mm. That's lovely. That's lovely. Okay, it's time for another brief sponsor break. Stay with us. Okay, Liz, it's time for your coaching takeaway.
Well, most of the coaching conversations that I have with athletes in transition tend to focus on what they've lost. So, an
Mm,
athlete who's been injured says, "Oh, I've lost my fitness, or I've lost my main event, or this version of themselves that felt fit and more capable." And trust me, as someone who's coming back from tendinopathy, I totally feel you there.
mhm,
Um, but Shankar really helps to reorient that. She says it's not that the question isn't what was taken. Obviously, there's stuff that was taken and missing, but it's what was built and whether it can go somewhere new. So maybe the athlete who defined themselves by their marathon time is now injured, still has everything they built to get there. So there's still that grit and that tolerance for hard things and the discipline, and none of that leaves when the plan changes. She said it just doesn't have a home yet. So the question then is, who else can I now become? And
mm,
that's one that I want to start asking people, when they're going through these different things. It was something I asked myself as I was rehabbing the hamstring, I just said, well, who might I become now? Or how can how can I become better from this?
Mm,
So, and she said to just start asking those questions at the beginning, because I think sometimes we ask them when the transition is over, but maybe
mm.
when it first happens, just planting that seed in the garden again. Here we go. Love a good gardening reference. Yeah, just plant the seed early.
All right, let's talk about some ways to apply this in this community that we exist in.
So stop treating the post race or post injury period as something just to get through.
Mm,
So Shankar says to reframe that window as one of the most important thinking periods available. Think about all the athletes out there. After you've done a marathon or an ultra or an Ironman, you are just in, it just feels like dead time, right? Like just brain fog, brain mush. But really, it's active time. And
mm,
you want to be sort of gathering information about, well, what did this build in me? And what does it transfer to? And what do I actually want next? Not what do I want to recover, but what do I want to become now that I've achieved this great thing? Or maybe you fell short and you need to think about what you want to become then. So
mm,
you want to ask those questions when you're in the gap rather than when you're just on the other side of it.
mm. Interesting. All right, this really speaks to me as I'm currently not able to run. And instead of focusing on what I can't do, I've been so pleased with what I can do
Yeah.
and how happy I am to be doing those things now. And, given my career, I don't want to say that I don't miss running, but I really, gosh, when I was injured before, I was just pining away for running. Just and oftentimes that was because it was an injury. I keep thinking about my fractured ankle that I had to have surgery
Hmm.
on in 2015. So then I really wasn't able to do much anything. So but now, I can play pickleball, I'm open water swimming, which I love doing that, it's summertime.
Hmm.
I'm lifting heavy and I'm walking to and from the gym. When I got the membership, I thought, "Oh, I'll run to and from the gym." Walking. So, you know, I know there will come a time when I can run to and from that gym, but that time isn't now.
Yeah.
And this off time isn't bumming me out as those previous sidelines have. So,
Yeah, that's great perspective. And I think you have to go through a few injuries before you get to that place. Like you
mhm.
said, I'm thinking back when I had like my first major injury in my early 40s, I just felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. And now sometimes, I hate to admit this, sometimes I find it a little freeing because it opens up time and space in a different way. And
Yes.
like you said, when I couldn't run as much, I was out there walking
Mm,
with a neighbor. And it was so nice just to be able to spend an hour walking with someone. I wouldn't do that if I was running more. It's a
yes.
lot of time
Mhm.
on the feet. But
Precisely. Yeah.
yeah, you just
Mhm.
you just start to see things and you just realize also that this is okay. Like life
Mhm.
goes on and there's so many other things I can do.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So other takeaways for our community?
Sure, this is one that we've covered before, but it's always nice to bring up that you want to use distanced self-talk when a hard effort or hard period in life starts to unravel. So
Mm.
we've talked about this before, how referring to yourself by name when different things get difficult. I think I've said to you before that sometimes before a race, if I'm sort of falling apart, I'll be like Fedosky, which is my maiden name. Get it
Yeah.
together. And I know that you will refer to yourself as Champy.
Champy, yep.
But this made me think, I used to be a prolific blogger. And so it was like the story was always being written in my head.
Of
And I
course,
just
yeah.
thought, did you ever, like when you were out there doing races or whatnot, did you ever narrate your own race from the outside, like looking in? Did you do that?
That and taking notes about it. So, kind of
Yeah.
kind of experiencing it and processing it almost at the same time. Like my future self was coming back and be like, "What are you learning from this? What's your takeaway? What's a good sentence you can use?"
Yes. And I think that sort of introspection and engagement is sort of dwindling. I think people, like, even before races, they're just like looking at their phone or listening to their headphones. But I think when you just take the time to really think and engage, then the whole experience is richer and deeper. And my husband and I were having this conversation the other day. We have like 25 years worth of just stuff from races, right? Like different awards. And he's like, oh, if all those were gone tomorrow, I wouldn't care. And I'm like, seriously? I would be devastated because I look at each of those not as like, wow, I did this, but more of like, I totally remember being at that race and the
Mhm.
story of the race and the people I met there and the weather and the course. And it's such a great memory. It's like a book that's all in front of me on shelves.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it funny how a certain moment from a race will also come back to you?
Hmm.
Like I just so distinctly remember mile 15 of Big Sur Marathon in tw 2010 and just looking out at the Pacific and looking up at the gray sky overhead. And if I was a better artist, I could totally paint you a picture of it. Like, and who knows why that specific moment comes back to me, but I don't know. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're just beautiful memories. I mean, that's the way I
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
races is
and also yeah, exactly, and that is a great thing. You know, our sport, our activity gives us so many of those memories. Back to you
hmm
saying about awe, you know, that if you're just kind of inside, always grinding away, it's those to me, it's being outside
yeah.
that gives those memories. There's so much texture. There's the wind in your face, there's the sun on your shoulders, you know, there's the smell of the ocean, all that stuff adds in. So
Yeah. And that leads right into my next takeaway, which is to try to build an intentional awe practice into your training and
mm,
not just as a recovery, but almost as an intervention. And so, like you just said, when it's possible, when it's safe, obviously like today we have an air quality alert. Probably not safe to get out there, but when you can, get outside, experience nature, run in a new place. This week, my daughter has been in a ceramics camp about 30 miles away, and
mm,
there's a river trail there. And
mm.
I have been doing my afternoon runs there. And just that subtle shift, it's like, wow, it's the same stupid 35-minute run I do almost every day, but it was just in a different place with different
Yes.
trees and it just made a difference and just being out there. So I would encourage people like go to different places that might inspire you. Take an extra 5 minutes to go to a different trail or go in a different direction, and
Yeah.
maybe turn the podcast off for the first 10 minutes and just let yourself be and experience it, and let that awe fill you.
That's so funny. There's this woman, Carrie, who I play pickleball with, and her daughter was going to a camp up in the town where in Vancouver, Washington, where that pond is that I swim. And so before the week of camp, she was like, Sarah, remind me the name of that place because when I drop her off, I'm going to go there. And Carrie texted me while she was at the pond. She was like, you are so right about this place. This is the nicest water I've ever been in. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. And I was like, oh, awesome. Someone else has discovered the beauty of Kleinline Pond.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So what's the one line recommendation?
This book will not tell you that change happened for a reason.
Mm,
It will show you what to do with it anyway.
mm,
And so now I'm going to do the spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you what her big life change was that she revealed in the last chapter of the book. And really, it just kind of came out of left field because this whole time you're thinking, oh, she had to give up the violin, and that was her trauma or change. But she reveals that after trying several times with a surrogate, she was unable to have children, and she
mm,
kind of takes you through the whole process. And
mm,
I read that, I mean, as someone who struggled to have kids, and it brings back all those emotions, but you often hear that, oh, it happened for a reason. And that was one of those things where I'm reading that and I'm like, this didn't happen to this woman for a reason. It just happened. And it was a
mhm,
change. And she wasn't looking for the reason it happened. She just found a way to channel it into this podcast, A Slight Change of Plans, and
mm,
this book, and hopefully, bring together this community of people who have gone through these changes, but have still found a way to move forward.
mm. That's lovely. It's interesting when you said the early on that reveals a big change at the end. My mind immediately went to infertility, and I just sort of
Oh,
thought that was
really?
my personal experience coloring that because we had secondary infertility, and thus the reason we have twins. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing us this book. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation, as I always do with you, Liz. So, thank you.
Thanks.
So thanks, folks, for listening. Miles of Books is a production of Another Mother Runner and Feisty Media. For more on Feisty and our other podcasts, events, workshops, and Feisty Fest, where Coach Liz and I will both be in mid-September doing, among other things, recording an episode of this very show with a book we'll encourage attendees to read in advance. That book is TBA. To find all that stuff, visit feisty.co. That's feisty.co.